Hello and welcome back. My name is Nichole Weimer and I'm one of Heritage for All's interns. Today is the 24th of November 2019. For today's video, I will be discussing the article that I wrote surrounding the theme heritage preservation and rural communities. I specifically hone in on the topic of preservation of Estonia's culinary heritage through the slow food movement. So without further ado, let's begin. Food holds such a special place for us. On our tables, in recipe books and festivals, to our stomachs, our individual and collective memories, but especially within the realm of our heritage. In this video, I like to articulate the concept of heritage preservation and its role through rural communities that stimulate and enhance our gastronomic cultural heritage. Later, I'll be exemplifying the defining boundaries in relation to the slow food movement, particularly in Estonia, to further conceptualize how rural cuisine and its gastronomic cultural heritage are being recognized and safeguarded by the community members through the slow food project, the Ark of Taste. Before we step further into gastronomic cultural heritage, I'd like to draw upon Jacinthe Berthier's article from 1998, Local Development and Heritage, Traditional Food and Cuisine as Tourist Attractions in Rural Areas, to help define and understand the concept of heritage. And what she says is that heritage is typically understood to be situated with and within tradition. But she argues that heritage is not a static concept nor framework, but rather a concept that is in perpetual negotiation with its community members. Heritage, therefore, is not fossilized and rendered stagnant or fixed within any given community. What is considered to be a community's heritage is therefore transacted by its members continuously by what is considered to be relevant to the members' current perception of their own identities. Consequently, because of the need for relevance to heritage application, heritage becomes a subjective model in which requires real social selection and interaction that is actively engaged and selected according to its significance to the community's collective memories and ideas of who they are both within the community and how they are presenting themselves outside of their communities. This definition is also supported by four authors, Ramila, Zahari, Halim, and Aris. Their 2017 article, The Knowledge of Food Heritage Identity in Klang Valley, Malaysia, says that cultural heritage is complicated and tricky to preserve and measure since it is associated with a multitude of values, beliefs, behaviors, and the rules of society. And what is most fitting to the concept of heritage is what elements are specifically selected to be preserved and the aspects that no longer serve or subscribe to the community's desired image of themselves. Those aspects that are dismissed are consequently lost. Berthier draws on a idea that was generated first by Fabre, the beauty of death. And what beauty of death means is that the concept articulates how particular tangible or intangible elements are latched onto in the wake of their near disappearance, and their beauty is measured and calculated through the shock generated by emotion and memory. And food heritage is no different to other aspects of a culture's heritage. Ramila and the previous three authors that wrote the food study case in Malaysia also drew a statement from Professor Datuk Zuraina Mayid, the former Commissioner of Heritage, who postulated that food heritage appears in two distinctive classifications. The first recognizes daily and common foods or meals that are present in our everyday lives as food heritage, while the second category recognizes endling foods, foods that are near extinction from a select cultural community that were once part of our culture but are slowly dying out. In the past few decades, rural environments and lifestyles have been gaining more attention and traction by the local people as well as visitors seeking for something more unique than the quintessential mainstream destination points, such as purely, for example, the Eiffel Tower. People are seeking out more authentic experiences, which leads them into rural spaces. But because of this therefore redesigns the perception of rural. What was once an image deemed to be negative, if not derogatory, as Bessier beautifully put, is now being romanticized and thus a promoted ideal. The rural space and rural lights, the people who live in these spaces, have preserved and safeguarded the roots of our identities and heritage from which are born from the rural scape. This has drawn urbanites to rediscover the good old days through the form of tourism. And rural has therefore become synonymous in current times with the concept of traditional food. And with the consumption of these traditional and or natural foods, foods from farms and so forth, the urban people ingest multitude of aspects interwoven with the traditional food that allows the consumer to connect with nature, culture, and the identity of a specific and particular area. And with that, I like to lead us into the slow food movement. And this movement was born in 1986 at the foot of the Spanish Steps in Rome as a protest against the construction of a new McDonald's. We really don't need more McDonald's throughout the world. But this was inspired and led by Carlo Petrini. And since its birth, it has evolved into a revolutionary rebellion and counter-movement against the industrial mass food production complex, poor agriculture practices, and the erasure of our small farms and farmers, as well as the fast food industry. It has engulfed the world's attention, motivating different countries across the world to join in on this revolutionary act and awareness raising. Over 160 countries are now members. And Slow Food's philosophy on food has been declared that food is good, clean, and fair food. It probably goes without saying that food plays such a critical and fundamental role in our everyday lives as biological beings, from nutritional value and biological sustenance, but it also transcends into other intangible aspects and realms in our lives, such as the tapestry of our heritage, our different cultures, and the multitude of our identities. Food symbolizes who we are as individuals and community members, both as producers and consumers. And the slow food movement state of affair acknowledges and validates this belief, as well as the plethora of factions and modes that materialize within the spheres of political and environmental concerns to preserve the preservation of our cultural heritage and identity. And the intentions of this movement, that is stated in their statutes, is to rediscover the pleasure of growing, selling, and consuming food, including the relationships that are constructed and sustained within the local context. This calls upon the myriad of diverse actors within the web of foodways with responsibility and duty to protect heritage of food, traditions, and cultures that makes this pleasure possible. It must be made clear that the slow food founder does not intend to say we should all return back to the land, we should go back to being farmers, cultivating it, let's leave our cities and so forth, because let's be frank, that's not moving forward. But rather what he did intend and calls upon is to maximize what is naturally available to us, what is local, and what is very so much intrinsic to the heritage of that specific area, raising awareness of that, creating avenues in which that is accessible, as well as a way to promote that and hold that above all else. Because where we are located, the geographical localities in which we exist in, is so systematic into our heritage, and that is being readily forgotten in the wave of global food. Slow Food's creed promotes the aims and intentions of supporting these local networks that have existed before the globalized and centralized market. At the Slow Food Conference held on November 8th to 11th of 2007 in Puebla, Mexico, the international statute was drafted. And in Article 3, the statute lists the definitions and various aims of movements intended to promote and foster this concept. Such examples are as follows: reconnecting and supporting the common interests of local regions, the culinary heritage of food and its production as a way to safeguard the land and socio-cultural identities of a given area, uphold high-quality food that fulfill the three absolutely fundamental elements: sensory goodness, ecological sustainability of production, distribution, and consumption processes, as well as respect for social justice and dignity for all the people that are involved within the food production chain. And through such an enactment, the communities can have the autonomy to choose to disengage with big corporation and industrial food giants with intentions to preserve and promote local cultural heritage foods. In Article 3.2b, the international statute aims in the effort to promoting or supporting initiatives that aim to preserve and add value to the historical and cultural identity of a specific geographical area. And the movement has created various projects to educate, foster, and sustain these intentions, as well as promoting good, clean, and fair food. So that leads us into the project that I want to capitalize on today, the Ark of Taste. The Ark of Taste, aptly named, is a project that's paired with an online database that operates quite similarly to UNESCO's framework in the operation of nominating heritage foods and traditional practices that are under threat by industrialization and factory processing throughout the world. The website is simply constructed, but well done, and it's really easy to navigate and gain the information that you are seeking out. There's also a map that allows users to interact with, and you can actually select different countries that are part of the Ark of Taste project. So I had pulled up some numbers just to give you an idea if you don't choose to check the really cool website out. Some countries that have gastronomical heritage foods nominated is Italy, the founding country, I should say. They have an immense amount, actually. They have 883 different gastronomical heritage foods nominated. Turkey has 66. China has 85. The United States has 356. Argentina comes in with 136. Indonesia at 55. Germany at 74. Egypt has 36. India 107. And the particular country that I am focusing on, Estonia, has a grand total of 2. These 2 are koera gypsies, which are oat biscuits, and lest. It's a dried and smoked flounder type of fish, the flat fish. And Sodama's nominated food represents the Estonian heritage and recognition of the importance of local foodways, because before the food is agriculture, it is the cook's duty to support local agriculture and small farmers. The future is in the fields and dignity. Life is not just consuming and producing, but also about the relationships between community members to the land and the food that is consumed, and therefore the identities and heritage that we also consume and intake. So oat biscuits, koera gypsies, is a rustic and humble biscuit comprised of 4 simple ingredients: oat flour, butter, sugar, and eggs. What's not to love? The oat flour is sourced locally from the fields that are on this island, and it's processed at the local mill. However, the threat of extinction to this local heritage food is the shift from in-home made biscuits to a more mechanical and therefore factory-based production. As the nomination states on the webpage, there are very few local bakeries that produce the traditional biscuits, keeping to the original recipe without adding additional ingredients, whether that be chocolate pieces, raisins, or perhaps even preservatives and other things keep the longevity of its shelf life in stores. Locally produced gaira gypsies proves to be an expensive and time-consuming endeavor, from the manual labor to the high cost of ingredients that are sourced directly from the local region. And these biscuits no longer represent flavors of a remembrance when it's being forced out of the local heritage by its cheaper opponent, the factory-made gaira gypsies. Lest, which is dried and salted flounder, is due to Estonia's geographical location and climate being so far north that fish has played a critical role in the local cuisine. It was a way for locals to consume healthy foods during the long and cold winter seasons, which a lot of things were not available. Fermentation, smoking, and drying techniques and practices were also deeply embedded in the style of food here in this region. And less is a local Saaremaa staple, and the flounder is fished for in the two glacial water bodies that surround the island of Saaremaa, the Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Riga, during the months of June to September. And its size was important because the flounder needed to be quote-unquote as big as the palm of the hand to ensure that there is enough meat once dried. And the process was technical and skill-based, requiring multiple steps as well as time to produce. And the webpage informs readers that the flounder was gutted and its head was detached. Salting the fish required at least 4 hours, followed by a wash, and it was hung up on the lines by its own tail. The drying period lasted from 2 to 6 days, depending on the weather that day, week. And the fish was consumed either as is or along with other components such as dark rye bread, boiled potatoes, oven roasted potatoes, and other forms of potatoes. Lest faced the food lest faced possible extinction as it was not sold in shops due to its naturally low production, as well as the shift into factory production. In its nomination, it faces a loss of authenticity and identity. New lifestyles are leading to traditional houses being abandoned, making it hard to find a place with the right characteristics for drying the fish, so fewer people are making this typical product. So through this, I wanted to conceptualize how the Ark of Taste offers a strategy to recognize, protect, and encourage the awareness of heritage foods in the wake of globalization and industrialized production. These rural spaces, communities, and identities act as a collective memory with roots deeply embedded with cultural heritage while nurturing the sensation of kinship to a specific region and charging it with merit. The distinct culinary techniques, processes, and knowledge situated within an explicit locality, therefore, is recognized as an integral part of an individual, collective, and territorial identity construction. Through promoting a specific gastronomic product by conserving its skills and techniques leads to reenacting history, reapproaching what has been lost, and also helping to create, innovate, and accept change. It is within these rural communities that culinary heritage can facilitate a deeper sense of belonging to a unique geographical locality and peoples, but more notably, the longevity of our heritage.